So really excited to get into this. So let's just get right into it. I did my book report on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, before we get into the actual book, I'm going to run us through a quick exercise real quick. So, Sam, can you tell me what you see in this picture?
It looks like it's a really fast car.
Really fast car? How much you think it costs?
200,000.
200,000, man. So, you've looked at this picture for a few seconds. You got 200,000 in your mind. What if I told you you could own that car for about $15? Because that's not a real car. That's actually a car out of a video game that I play sometimes. So I'm not here to talk about the game. I'm here to talk about a little subsection at the start of the book where he covers perception and how it filters what we see every day in our day-to-day lives. And this actually was my biggest single takeaway from the book, and it didn't even cover any of the 7 habits. But basically, what he says in the book is our past perceptions filter how we see things to such a degree that 2 people can look at the exact same thing and have a completely different image in their mind. And that explains so many things about how the world works and how I personally see things on a day-to-day basis. It was a real eye-opener to me. All right, so on to the 7 habits. I'm only going to be covering the 3 in bold. I would love to cover all of them, but sadly, I'm short on time. So first one, be proactive. Second one, begin with the end in mind. And the last one, sharpen the saw. All right, so be proactive. Take a look at that picture. Just look at it. Don't need to worry about it right now. I'll get to that in a minute. So being proactive, what does that mean? Basically, I'm sure you guys have all heard, I am the master of my own fate. Being proactive goes off that. The person that is considered proactive, you would say they don't ever say, why me? They take control of life, they take it by the reins, and they reel it in. They are responsible for what their life is and who they want to be. So I'm sure none of you have actually heard this name besides Devin, because I've already talked to him about him. But this guy on the left here, his name's Bob Wildar. Now, the reason I bring Bob Wildar up is because he was probably one of the most famous electronic engineers in the history of the world, in my opinion. So, a little bit of backstory about him real quick before we get into my main point. Bob joined the Fairchild Semiconductor in about the 1960s, and by the 1970s, this man alone right here, Bob Wildar, was responsible for designing over 80% of the linear circuits produced in the world. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about linear circuits, but that is a huge market, like billions of dollars in market in the 70s. And his company was raking in 80% of that. Now, see, Bob was doing this, and he was really great at his job, actually the best, because he wanted to make a lot of money. That was his goal. He was being proactive to go out and grab that money. So you would think he'd get a raise, right? He's making the company billions of dollars a year. And make no mistake, this was him and him alone. It wasn't his team, it was him. Of course, they didn't give him a raise. Of course, he saw none of that money. It was basically windfall money to his company. So what did he do? Well, I'll tell you what, he didn't choose to sit around and mope about it and complain and sit at a job that he had very negative feelings about. He got proactive about it. He jumped ship and left and joined National Semiconductor. So, next part of the book. Begin with end in mind. Now, I know you don't know what this picture is. Don't worry about that. We'll get to that in a minute. What I want to talk a little bit about is beginning with end in mind and what that means. What that means is, so consider this. Consider you go to a funeral, and at that funeral, you walk up to the casket and you look in, and surprise, it's you. Think about what's going to be said for a eulogy. Think about who you'd want to speak and what you would want them to say about you. Now, you visualize that right now. That's beginning with the end in mind. And it's a continuous process while you're going through life. Not only do you need to think about the end right now, but you need to think about the end when going from step to step and how you're going to get there. So back to this picture. Raymond, can you tell me, do you know anything about development of large software projects, say games or applications or anything? How many people do you say it takes on average in time frame?
Huge teams and many hours.
Yeah, how huge would you say?
Even small game companies usually employ 5 to 10 people. That's small, and usually they need a few $1,000s to support everyone and the game itself. So,
well, the reason I have this picture on here, it says Kenshi, is because this is actually a video game developed by one man alone. Now, it's important that it's developed by one man alone because this one man worked on this project by himself for 12 years straight. I bring this up because, one, that's a massive display of perseverance in my mind. And two, there's no way he could have ended up actually publishing this game. There's no way, not a chance he would end up publishing this game if he did not begin with the end in mind, what he wanted the finished product to look like, and if he did not constantly think about that throughout the process. All right, and the last part, and my favorite one of the habits, is called sharpen the saw. I also like to call it continual improvement. Now, what this means is basically you should be improving constantly, whether that be in the physical aspects of your life or your emotional, mental, spiritual, social, whatever. Whatever, you should always be improving in your life. And this kind of rung a bell with me because, as you'll see here in a minute, it reminds me of Toyota. Now, why does it remind me of Toyota? It's because one of Toyota's core principles and how they became such a manufacturing giant in today's world is actually a little thing called Kaizen theory, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it basically means good change or continual improvement. And what that is basically anybody in the company's structure, anybody from like the line worker you see in this picture, for example, all the way up to the CEO, any change they think would be good, you should try and implement and see if it improves performance. So that, in my mind, is a great process. And Toyota is the giant they are today because they've been continuously improving for over 40 years now. So let's take a step back though, because that's Toyota. How does that apply to us? Well, for one, we don't have a large structure. What do we have though? We have the LDP. We have all these members giving us feedback all the time, like I'm about to receive. So you should really be critical about that and look at this feedback and use that to sharpen your own saw per se. All right, so just a quick recap. The biggest 3 things I pulled out of this book personally for me was, 1, you gotta be proactive. You have to make it happen. You are the master of your own fate, and I firmly believe that. 2, begin with the end in mind. If you don't have a map and you don't know your end destination, you're never gonna get where you want to go. And 3rd point, sharpen your saw or continuously improve. My high school coach used to say, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. Let's get better today. And I like that phrase a lot. So with that being said, I leave you guys with one challenge. Find one way to sharpen your saw. Thank you for listening.